This is what I call Dare to be Vital with Alan Mishra, and we are super lucky to have as our guest today, Mr. Richard Viller. He is an orthopedic surgeon, a war surgeon, formerly a regimental medical officer in the Special Air Services, and has also served in the UK's disaster response and practiced in over 30 different countries. So I'm happy to call him my friend as well. And we are here to try and figure out how to thrive, not just survive the coronavirus crisis. And I think, are you thriving? I don't think that quite looks like England to me in the background.
Well, it's how I wish England would look, but it doesn't at the moment.
Yes, that's true. Now, you look great. Tell me a little bit. We just saw this morning that Prince Charles tested positive for the COVID virus. You know, here in the States, we have a fascination with the monarchy. So I think we have to start there.
Okay, well, I mean, we, as you might imagine in England, we have a fascination with the monarchy as well. Actually, we're fiercely proud of them. So we're all very worried. But that said, we're told he's in good fettle. And we're told even more so that the Queen is also fine. So we're happy and relaxed, and we look towards a good outcome.
Excellent. Well, please give him my best when you see him next, okay?
If I ever do so, I will. Yes.
Fantastic. So again, what I'm trying to do a little bit here is just to tap into my network. And about a week ago, I was hiking. We'd been under quarantine here in the San Francisco Bay Area for about a week. So I was hiking, I think, well, how could I help? I'm just a lowly orthopedic surgeon here, and I've been put on the ice. I don't know if you've been put on ice, but I have. And so I started thinking, could I call up my friends around the world and just have them help me and help us learn how to thrive, not just survive? So tell me how has it been in England and London, and then what you're personally doing to stay as vital as possible.
Right, yeah, sure. I mean, England is having problems, the same as you're having problems. And I'm actually talking to you not from a Caribbean island, as you can see in the background. I'm actually in the epicenter of London. And I've been here self-isolating for a couple of weeks, I guess, and the sense of humor is still maintained. And I suppose it's very different. Here I am, I tend to visit other people's disasters, and here I am in the middle of my own. And it's very different being on the receiving end compared with seeing others who are, as it were, smitten by some natural disaster. But it's working out okay. It's just being very slow and very indeterminate.
So that's an interesting perspective, because I know you have traveled into very difficult zones around the world, and now the zone is the middle of London. And what lessons can you apply from those times that you've been in other people's disaster zones that you are applying to yourself today?
Well, I mean, I think I think before we met, I sort of wrote down a number of things really, which I guess I saw as important, because I've generally been into places where society has completely broken down.
Yes.
Where there's no control, and where the society is actually quite selfish in a funny sort of way. I mean, people, when it comes to survival, they really have to look into themselves, and often the bigger picture is lost. They just got to keep themselves going. But within this environment, and here I am self-isolating, I'm told if I stay where I am, I will never get COVID-19. And the only time I'm going to get COVID-19 is when I meet somebody else. Now, that's either the doorstep, they're delivering something. Invariably, when they deliver, I say if they deliver on time, invariably they won't. They won't give me at least 50% of what I've ordered. But that's the risk point. But we're allowed in London to go out once a day to exercise. We're allowed to go to shops to buy food if we must. We're allowed to look after people who are vulnerable. We're allowed to go to a pharmacy, and that's it. Now, they left the regulations slightly loose. So, for example, the determination of go out to take exercise is very variable. I'd rather censor some people going out all day on a long bicycle ride because they say that's exercise. I tend to go out for about an hour, and we're doing social distancing. And people say to me, what is social distancing? Actually, it's the wrong word to make social distancing. It should really be called anti-social distancing, because that's what we're doing. We're
Yes.
staying as far away from anybody possibly can. And they've given us a 2-meter distance over here. I don't know if they've given you over there, but that's roughly what we're told to do. I don't
Well,
know.
one thing I might ask you just for a second is maybe turn that virtual background off. I don't know whether there's the sound of the waves going or not, but the audio has been a little bit challenging. So we're going to have to take you away from your idyllic Caribbean island.
What do I got? FaceTime HD, choose virtual background. What do we got? Virtual background, none. Here we go. That's me.
I love it. Yeah, I think there were waves crashing in your background, which was kind of overriding the audio. So I heard you clearly, though, that I think that's an interesting way to pose it. It's not social distancing, it's anti-social distancing. And I've experienced that myself as I've been trying to get outside. I will go running or I'll hiking, and people will purposely drift away from me. And I look hopefully healthy. I am healthy, but it is really psychologically a little bit challenging when you say, "Well, you just want to say hello," and it can be a problem. We've also had just 2 days ago. There's a hike around the Stanford Dish. There was a little wet outside, and an older woman fell and hit her head. And fortunately or unfortunately, I was the first one there before the ambulance 2 days ago. She was fine, but she was bleeding pretty profusely from her head. And I think people who have not been on slippery slopes before, need to be careful when they're outside exercising.
Yeah. I mean, I live in London in the middle of a medical area, really, if that's the right word. So a lot of the people you see are medics, even though they're not dressed like medics. And I went into the grocery store the other day, and we were trying to anti-social distance while shopping. That's easier said than done, isn't it? And I was heading towards the carrots, and this other chap was heading towards the potatoes. And it meant that we had to basically either enter each other's space or do something. Now, he looked at me and I looked at him, and he said, "Look, if you could just position yourself by beetroot." So I went over by beetroot, and he said, "Good, that's fine. Now I will head towards sweet corn. I'll turn right and I'll end up with potatoes." And I said, "Are you medical?" He said, "Yes, I am medical, actually surgical." And I said, "Surgical too," because one of the things we have, and you and I are the same, we are both orthopedic surgeons, and what we're being asked to do is actually pretty natural for us. We do that. I haven't realized how fortunate we were, if that's the right thing. It's natural to behave in the way we're being asked to behave. And people look at us as if we're slightly odd and being obsessive, but I think they're beginning to understand now, aren't they, the value of this, I'll call it properly now, social distancing.
That's interesting. So I should walk in the grocery store holding my hands up like I don't have my gloves on yet. And I think I didn't think about that. Richard, that's a really fascinating thing. So when we walk, for those people who aren't surgeons, when we walk into the operating room after we have carefully scrubbed our hands singing Happy Birthday 3 times, we walk in with our hands held up like this. If they're still wet, we get a sterile towel, we dry them off. But if we step away from a table, or we don't turn our backs to other people, we don't interact with things that are not sterile. Yeah. So, wow, maybe you're going to have to give me a video on how to social distance in the grocery store. That would be fascinating.
I think it would. But also, we are quite happy to remind each other in the operating room if we've done something wrong. I mean, there's been the occasional time when I've touched something by mistake, and my theatre sister has, well, if she hasn't smacked me on the back of the hand with a retractor, she shouted at me, and I'm quite accustomed to that. And I think at a civilian, non-medical level, people are sometimes quite offended by that.
Right.
Whereas we're not. It's just absolutely routine. When people tell you to behave, you behave.
Well, the other part, I think, in the operating room, we're paranoid about having any infections for our surgeries. It's not so much us we are worried about, but more about our patients. And it's this time we're turning it around. It's more about us. So, wow, that's really fascinating information. Now, what are the challenges, and especially the social challenges, that you see people in England facing, and or yourself? Because I looked it up and tried to understand what's happening to us. And it's not in this particular crisis, but if you look at people who are socially isolated, their blood inflammatory markers are actually higher. So things like their CRP and other markers of inflammation are higher. So I imagine if we did a study right now, because we are such social creatures, our inflammation's up a little bit for no other reason other than we're being forced to, or need to stay away from other people.
I mean, I hadn't realised that the inflammatory markers went up, but that's actually a very interesting finding. But look, I mean, mankind is a sort of a social animal, and I think the first thing is people are frightened. I mean, I think we're perhaps fortunate as medics because we can see things slightly dissociated from the reality, as it were. We can look at things almost as a slightly academic exercise. That people who are not medical, they really are terrified. And I think I first came across that a short while ago when there was a big video conference, rather like we are now. Video conferencing is much more common these days. And we had a video conference of about 35 people. And I suddenly realized these were non-medical people. They were all writers because I write about the life. And most of them were frightened what was going to happen. And I sort of felt my role, and I don't know if I did it particularly well, was to try and take them away from that fright. Because actually, there is no real need to be frightened. It's just that we all absorb, we have this obsession to look at every news bulletin, and everything that's affecting somebody 1,000 miles away is actually affecting us in our small rooms, when it isn't. And actually, when we are self-isolating, we are utterly secure, utterly secure.
That's a very good point. And I think one of the reasons I'm doing these interviews right now is to help people understand that there is reason for optimism. I believe in our profession. I believe in the people who are trying to combat this virus, that we are going to come out of this at the other end. There's certainly going to be devastation on all across the globe, and each individual who succumbs to this or even contracts this virus has a price to pay. But I believe we will come out victorious. Now, what we do between now and then, we have to be a little careful about how we consume media. In the United States, which you may or may not have seen, it'd be an interesting question. Have you heard anything about California in the last 2 or 3 days?
I've heard a little, and I understand that haven't you been completely locked down?
We have, but this is an interesting exercise that I like to do of what has not been reported. Okay, now what has not been reported is the hospitals in California are not overrun. The hospitals and the people in California are actually doing very well. And we're trying to understand why. Is it because the weather's better? Is it because people may choose better lifestyles or have less risk or less obesity or less smoking? But I think we need to study region by region why certain things are so challenging, for instance, in New York City right now versus in Northern California. And there are clues to potentially combating or flattening the curve country by country and region by region that we need to clearly understand better.
Yeah, I mean, interesting with this flattening the curve, which we hear a lot about, is that actually, with luck, it's going to reduce the number of cases, but actually, I'm not so sure it's going to reduce the total number. It's just going to distribute them over a longer period of time, isn't it? So, in one respect, you are doing the right thing by ensuring your healthcare services can manage, can cope. At the same time, to do that, you've got to string it out over a longer period of time.
Yeah, I think there are very difficult choices being made by our leaders across the world right now with regard to resources, with regard to the economy, with regard to the devastation that could occur because of the economic challenges of self-isolation. But on the other side of that, I am so excited to be, talking to you as an innovation of, we should have talked a long time ago about a variety of things, but it's forced me to say, how can I stay in touch with my friends? I was supposed to see you in Cambridge for an orthopedic meeting a couple of weeks ago, or just last week, right? And that got canceled. And I was very devastated by not being able to see you and our other colleagues. But it got me thinking, well, why can't I connect with them? And because of the technology that we're using right now, it's become much more facile to be able to do this.
I mean, I think staying in contact with people, firstly, this event, as it were, has obliged us to communicate in this way. We are fortunate compared with our forefathers that we are able to communicate in this way. And I'm sure it's a really good thing to do. I mean, the other thing is also to contact people whom you wouldn't normally contact, or often when, let's say, somebody gets COVID-19, or let's say somebody gets a war wound, or whatever it may be, there's a natural instinct to leave them alone, let them get on with it. They want to get themselves better. Well, actually, quite often they will really welcome an approach by you. So I found I'm talking to all sorts of people online at the moment who I would never normally speak to under normal circumstances because we all think we're too busy.
That's a very good suggestion, to reach out to people maybe you haven't talked to before, and also to reach out to those who may be infected or are in quarantine and potentially affected. I'd like to finish up our little chat with two quick questions.
Sure.
So you look like you're in great shape. So how are you staying in shape? And I've had a problem because the refrigerator is beckoning me. It's calling me, and it said I went out and bought too much food, and I felt a little sorry for myself, so I bought some comfort food, and now the refrigerator is like a little demon saying, I have cake, I have chocolate, I have things.
Don't say that, because I got cake and chocolate outside here as well.
So I've been trying to figure out, number one, how to stay in shape. Number two, how not to eat too much. Any suggestions?
Well, I mean, any suggestions indeed. Look, I mean, I think I was told by an ex-boss a million years ago. He was a spinal surgeon, and so by definition, a lot of his patients had chronic pain despite going through surgery. And he said to the patients who were really having a rough ride, he said, get up every morning at the same time and put on your clothes, okay? So dress, don't go downstairs in your pajamas. Basically, begin the day as you need to continue, as if you were going to. Have your meals on time, okay? Stick to firm meal times, go steady on the alcohol. You're not going to drop dead. You eat remarkably little food, actually, when it gets down to it. And basically, just treat the day as normally as you can. Yes. And so I think sticking to meal times and avoiding snacks, and I'm the first person to be sinful here. If you show me a bar of chocolate, I'll eat it at any time of day or night. But the fact is, one shouldn't overeat, because in no time at all, we're going to have a whole load of huge great whales with big tummies coming out of self-isolation in however many weeks.
That's true. Well, listen, I like to keep these short and sweet, but I really thank you so much for your time, and I hope that you, your family, and Prince Charles are all going to stay happy, healthy, and vital.
We will ensure we do, and thank you very much indeed, Owen.
Awesome.